Have you ever ignored a warning from someone you love, only to discover the truth was far more shocking than you could have imagined? I'm Margaret Sullivan, and at 52 years old, I thought I knew my husband of 28 years better than anyone. But when my 6-year-old son started saying strange things about his father, I dismissed it as childhood imagination. That decision nearly cost me everything. This is my story. A journey through betrayal, discovery, and ultimately, an unexpected truth that changed our family forever. If you've ever questioned your instincts or wondered if you really know the people closest to you, stay with me. Because what I found hidden in our ordinary suburban life will leave you speechless. I was folding laundry in our sunlit bedroom when my son Tommy burst through the door. His Superman backpack still strapped to his small shoulders, his cheeks were flushed, and his brown eyes held something I hadn't seen before, genuine fear. "Mommy, Daddy has a secret room," he said, breathless from running up the stairs. I smiled, not looking up from the towels I was matching. "Honey, Daddy's office isn't a secret. You know you're not supposed to go in there when he's working." "No, Mommy, not that room, a different one, in the basement, behind the old bookshelf." My hands paused mid-fold. Our basement was Jim's domain, his workshop, his storage area, his escape from the chaos of family life. In 28 years of marriage, I'd rarely ventured down there. It was an unspoken agreement. He didn't reorganize my kitchen, and I didn't disturb his basement sanctuary. "Tommy, what were you doing in the basement? You know Dad keeps his tools down there. It's not safe for you." His little face crumpled with frustration. "I was looking for my baseball. It rolled down the stairs." "But Mommy, I saw Daddy go behind the bookshelf. He didn't come out for a long time, and when he did, he was carrying papers and he looked different." "Different how, sweetheart?" "Scared. Like when I have a bad dream." I sat down on the bed and pulled Tommy onto my lap. At 52, with grown daughters from my first marriage and this unexpected late-in-life blessing, I'd learned to distinguish between childhood fantasy and genuine concern. But this felt like imagination running wild. "Baby, sometimes grown-ups have private spaces where they keep important work documents or special things. It doesn't mean it's a secret or anything bad. Daddy probably keeps his tax papers down there, or maybe old family photos he's organizing." Tommy shook his head vigorously. "No, Mommy, it's not like that. Yesterday, I heard him talking on the phone. He said, 'She can never know about this. It would destroy everything.'" A cold sensation crept down my spine, but I forced my voice to remain steady. "Tommy, you probably misheard. Daddy talks about work stuff all the time. He's a financial consultant. He has lots of confidential client information." But even as I said it, something nagged at me. Jim had been different lately, more distant. He'd installed a new lock on the basement door last month, claiming he wanted to keep Tommy away from his power tools. He'd been taking more evening walks around the neighborhood. And just last week, I'd noticed him quickly closing his laptop when I entered his office. "Mommy, promise me you'll check. Promise me." I looked into my son's earnest face and felt torn. Part of me wanted to march downstairs right then and demand Jim show me everything. But another part, the part that had built a comfortable life, that avoided conflict, that trusted the man I'd chosen to spend my golden years with, that part wanted to tuck this conversation away and forget it ever happened. "I promise I'll talk to Daddy," I said carefully. That night at dinner, I watched Jim more closely than I had in years. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he scrolled through his phone. He looked like he always did, stable, predictable, safe. The man who had swept me off my feet when I was a divorced mother of two, who had loved me when I felt past my prime, who had given me Tommy when I thought my childbearing years were behind me. "Long day?" I asked, keeping my tone light. He looked up and smiled. But it didn't quite reach his eyes. You know how it is, same old numbers, different day. Anything exciting happening? Not really. Why do you ask? I shrugged. No reason. Just making conversation. But as I cleared the plates later, I noticed his phone screen light up with a text. Tomorrow night, same time. Don't forget to delete. My hands trembled as I set the dishes in the sink. Maybe Tommy was right to be worried. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay beside Jim, listening to his steady breathing, watching the shadows dance across our bedroom ceiling. The man next to me felt like a stranger suddenly, even though I could map every familiar contour of his body, every habit and routine we'd built over nearly 3 decades together. At 52. I'd survived a painful divorce, raised 2 daughters, mostly on my own, and rebuilt my life from scratch. I thought I'd developed good instincts about people, but lying there in the darkness, I realized I'd become complacent, comfortable, maybe even willfully blind. The next morning, Jim left for work at his usual time, 7:30 a.m. sharp, coffee travel mug in hand, briefcase under his arm. I watched from the kitchen window as his silver sedan backed out of the driveway, then disappeared down our tree-lined street. Is Daddy gone? Tommy appeared at my elbow, still in his dinosaur pajamas. Yes, honey, he'll be back tonight. You going to check the basement now? I knelt down to his eye level. Tommy, I need you to tell me everything you saw and heard. Can you do that for Mommy? For the next 20 minutes, over bowls of cereal, my 6-year-old laid out his observations with surprising detail. He'd been watching his father for weeks, he said. He'd noticed I'd go into the basement at odd times, early morning before anyone else was awake, late at night after Tommy was supposed to be asleep. He'd heard phone conversations where Jim's voice sounded different, like he was pretending to be someone else. And the bookshelf, Tommy insisted. It moves. I saw it after dropping Tommy at school. I returned home to an empty house. My daughters were both living their own lives now, Sarah in Seattle with her husband and 2 kids, Jennifer finishing her medical residency in Boston. For the first time, I wished they were here, if only to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling this way. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, my hand on the new lock Jim had installed. He'd given me a key. Of course, married couples didn't keep locks from each other. He'd said it was just for safety, to keep Tommy out. The key turned smoothly. The door creaked open, revealing the wooden stairs descending into Jim's domain. I flipped the light switch and made my way down carefully, my heart hammering against my ribs. The basement looked exactly as it always had, Jim's workbench against one wall, boxes of holiday decorations stacked in the corner, his fishing equipment hanging neatly on hooks. And yes, there was the old bookshelf Tommy had mentioned, filled with Jim's collection of thriller novels and old National Geographic magazines. I approached it slowly, running my hands along the edges. It looked solid, immovable. I tried pushing it, pulling it, checking for any mechanism that might reveal a hidden space. Nothing. Maybe Tommy really did imagine it, I muttered to myself. But as I turned to leave, my foot caught on something. I looked down to see a slight gap between the bookshelf and the floor on one side, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I knelt down and peered into the gap. There were marks on the floor, as if something heavy had been moved repeatedly across the same path. My pulse quickened. I stood up and examined the bookshelf more carefully. That's when I noticed it, a small indentation in the side panel, like a finger hold. When I pressed it, I heard a soft click. The entire bookshelf swung outward on hidden hinges. Behind it was a door, a real door with a handle and another lock. I stood there, frozen, staring at this impossible thing. My husband had built a secret room in our house without telling me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. A text from Jim. Hope you're having a good day. Love you. I stared at those words, love you, and felt something crack inside me. How do you love someone and keep secrets like this? I tried the door handle. Locked, of course, but I was going to find out what was behind that door, even if it meant destroying my marriage to do it. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, going through the motions of normalcy while my mind raced with possibilities. What was Jim hiding? An affair seemed like the obvious answer, but why would he need a secret room for that? Illegal financial dealings, a gambling addiction, something worse. By the time I picked up Tommy from school, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a surprise. He was planning to renovate the basement and create a special space, a gift for our upcoming anniversary. Maybe he was writing a novel and didn't want to jinx it by telling me before it was finished. But then Tommy climbed into the car and said, "Did you find it, Mommy? Did you see the secret room? I found a door, honey, but it was locked." His eyes widened. "You have to open it before Daddy comes home." "Tommy, I can't just break into a locked room. That's not please. Mommy, something's wrong. I know it." There was such conviction in his voice that I couldn't dismiss it. Children have instincts too, sometimes sharper than our own because they haven't learned to doubt themselves yet. That evening, I played the role of the perfect wife. I made Jim's favorite dinner, pot roast with roasted vegetables. I asked about his day, laughed at his stories, acted like everything was normal, but I was studying him, searching for cracks in his facade. "Jim," I said carefully, as we cleared the table together, "have you been feeling okay lately? You seem stressed." He paused, his hands full of dirty plates. "I'm fine. Why? You've been distracted." Distant. "I'm worried about you." For just a moment, I saw something flash across his face. Guilt, fear, but then it was gone, replaced by his usual easygoing smile. "I'm good, Mags, really. Just a big project at work that's taking up a lot of mental space. It'll be over soon." "What kind of project?" "Oh, you know, client confidentiality and all that boring financial stuff." He kissed my forehead and carried the dishes to the sink. Case closed, as far as he was concerned, but I wasn't satisfied. Not anymore. After Jim went to bed that night, I crept downstairs to his office. His laptop was password protected, but I knew his passwords, or at least I thought I did. I tried our anniversary date, Tommy's birthday, combinations of our names. Nothing worked. I checked his desk drawers, looking for anything unusual. Bills, work documents, warranties for appliances. All normal household stuff, but in the bottom drawer, hidden under a stack of old tax returns, I found something that made my blood run cold. A second phone. It was a cheap flip phone, the kind you buy at convenience stores with prepaid minutes. The kind of phone people use when they don't want their calls traced. My hands shook as I opened it. There were no saved contacts, but the call history told a story. Dozens of calls to the same number over the past 3 months, and text messages that had been only partially deleted. Tuesday night worked perfectly. Same location next week. Don't worry, she suspects nothing. I felt like I was falling. The room tilted, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. 28 years of marriage, and I didn't know this man at all. A sound from upstairs made me freeze. Footsteps. Jim was awake. I shoved the phone back into the drawer and hurried out of his office, my heart pounding so hard I thought he'd surely hear it. I made it to the kitchen just as he appeared at the bottom of the stairs. "Hey," he said, squinting in the light. "What are you doing up? Couldn't sleep? Thought I'd make some tea." He nodded, already turning back toward the stairs. "Don't stay up too late." "Jim," I called after him. "Do you love me?" He turned, confusion on his face. "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" Just needed to hear it, as he disappeared upstairs. I knew what I had to do. I was going to get into that room tomorrow, lock or no lock. even if I had to break the door down myself. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in my entire marriage. I lied directly to Jim's face. I told him I had a doctor's appointment in the city and would be gone most of the day. He barely looked up from his newspaper, just mumbled okay, and reminded me to pick up his dry cleaning dot as soon as his car left the driveway. I was on the phone. But I didn't call a locksmith from the Yellow Pages. At 52, I'd learned that when you need discretion, you call in favors from people who understand complicated situations. My daughter Sarah's father-in-law, Marcus, had been a police detective for 30 years before retiring. More importantly, he was someone I trusted. Margaret, his warm voice came through the phone. Haven't heard from you in a while. How's everything? Marcus. I need help with something, and I need you to promise not to tell Sarah or Jim. There was a pause. That sounds serious. What's going on? I explained everything. Tommy's warnings, the secret room, the burner phone, the cryptic messages. Marcus listened without interrupting. And when I finished, he let out a long breath. I'll be there in an hour, he said. And Margaret, whatever's behind that door, you need to be prepared. In my experience, when a spouse goes to this much trouble to hide something, it's never good news. Marcus arrived with a small toolkit and the weathered face of a man who'd seen too much. He was in his 70s now, but his eyes were still sharp as he surveyed my basement. Well, this is something, he said, examining the hidden door behind the bookshelf. Professional installation. Your husband either did this himself or hired someone who knows what they're doing. Can you open it? I can, but before I do, you should know if there's anything illegal behind this door. I'm obligated to report it. Are you prepared for that possibility? I nodded, though my stomach was churning. I need to know the truth. Marcus worked in silence for about 15 minutes, his tools clicking and scraping against the lock mechanism. Finally, I heard a satisfying click. It's open, he said quietly. Do you want me to go in first? No, I need to see this myself. I pushed the door open and reached for a light switch inside. Fluorescent lights flickered on, illuminating a space about 12 by 12 feet. And what I saw made absolutely no sense. The room was an office, but not the kind of office Jim used for his financial consulting work. This office had multiple computers. 3 large monitors mounted on one wall, and filing cabinets labeled with what looked like case numbers. On the walls were photographs, dozens of them, connected by red string like something out of a crime drama. But what shocked me most was the subject of those photographs. They were surveillance photos of people. I didn't recognize men in expensive suits getting into cars, women entering hotels with briefcases, license plates, timestamps, detailed notes written in Jim's handwriting. Marcus whistled low. Margaret, your husband isn't having an affair. Then what is he doing? Marcus moved closer to examine the walls. His detective instincts clearly activated. He studied the photographs, the notes, the connections. Then he opened one of the filing cabinets and pulled out a folder. His face went pale as he read Marcus. My voice was barely a whisper. What is it? He looked at me with something that might have been respect, or maybe pity. Your husband is a private investigator, has been for years, from the looks of this. But Margaret, these aren't normal cases. These are serious, organized crime, money laundering, fraud cases. The kind of investigations that get people killed if they're not careful. I felt my legs give out. Marcus caught me and helped me to a chair. There was actually a chair down here, a desk. All the trappings of a second career I'd known nothing about. That's impossible, I said. Jim's a financial consultant. He goes to an office every day. He has clients. I've met some of them at company parties. Marcus handed me a folder. Look at this. Inside were credentials, a private investigator's license in Jim's name, issued 10 years ago. Contracts with law firms, correspondence with the FBI, letters of commendation, invoices for investigative work that paid 3 times what I thought he was earning. My husband had been living a double life for a decade, and I'd never suspected. A thing. I don't know how long I sat in that hidden room, surrounded by evidence of my husband's secret life. Marcus made coffee, apparently. Jim had a small coffee maker down here and let me process what I was seeing. Why, I kept asking, to no one in particular. Why would he hide this from me? Marcus sat down across from me, his weathered hands wrapped around his own coffee mug. In my experience, Margaret, people in this line of work keep secrets for 2 reasons. Either they're protecting themselves or they're protecting someone they love. I thought about Jim, my stable, predictable husband who had seemed so different from my first husband, the one who'd left me for his secretary when I was 43. Jim had been my second chance. My proof that good men still existed. He'd courted me patiently, understanding that I was damaged, wary of trusting again. He'd loved my daughters as if they were his own. He'd given me Tommy when I'd thought that chapter of my life was closed forever. I need to understand this, I said, standing up. All of it. Marcus helped me go through the files systematically. What emerged was a picture of a man I'd never known. Jim wasn't just a private investigator, he was someone who specialized in dangerous cases, financial crimes, yes, but also cases involving organized crime figures, corrupt politicians, wealthy individuals who used their money to hide terrible secrets. In one file, I found evidence that had helped convict a real estate mogul who'd been laundering money for a drug cartel. In another, photographs that had exposed a tax fraud scheme, bilking elderly victims out of their retirement savings. Jim's work had put genuinely bad people behind bars. But it had also put him in danger. I found a file dated from 8 years ago, around the time Tommy would have been conceived. Inside was a letter from the FBI thanking Jim for his cooperation in a major racketeering case. And attached to that letter was another document that made my blood run cold, a threat assessment. Subject has received credible threats against his life and family. It read, recommend immediate protective measures, consider relocation, advise minimal disclosure of personal information. He was protecting us, I whispered. Marcus nodded. Grimly, looks like it. By keeping you in the dark, he kept you safe. If you didn't know about his real work, you couldn't accidentally reveal something dangerous. You couldn't be targeted for information. I thought about all the times Jim had insisted on security cameras around our house, claiming he'd read about break-ins in the neighborhood, the way he'd taught Tommy never to talk to strangers, more insistent than most parents. How he'd insisted I keep my social media accounts private and never post photos showing our homes. Location, I'd thought he was being overprotective. Now I understood he'd been genuinely afraid. But understanding didn't erase the betrayal I felt. He'd made this choice for me, without letting me have a voice in it, for 10 years. He'd woken up beside me and kissed me goodbye and gone off to a life I knew nothing about. How many times had I asked about his day, and he'd lied? How many times had he been in actual danger, and I'd had no idea? There's something else. Marcus said carefully. He was holding a manila envelope marked current. Inside were photos taken just last week, a man I didn't recognize, outside a warehouse. More surveillance shots of what looked like some kind of exchange. Briefcases being passed from one car to another. And notes in Jim's handwriting. Final evidence gathering phase. Should wrap this case by end of month. Most dangerous subject. Yet Margaret and Tommy must never know. He's working on something right now, I said. Something dangerous. Marcus nodded. Very dangerous, from the looks of it. Margaret, I think we need to talk about what happens next. Your husband has been lying to you for years, yes. But he's also been doing something that matters, taking down people who hurt others, and if we confront him about this at the wrong time, we could jeopardize whatever case he's working on now. I thought about the text message Jim had received. Tomorrow night, same time. Tomorrow was tonight. I need to follow him. I said, I need to see what he's really doing, Margaret. That's a bad idea. If this case is as dangerous as it looks, he's my husband, and if he's in danger, I need to know. Marcus studied my face for a long moment, then sighed. You always were stubborn. Sarah gets it from you. Will you help me? He was quiet. Then nodded, on one condition. We do this carefully, and if things look dangerous, we call in professional help immediately. Deal. That evening. I went through the motions of normalcy with an actress's skill I didn't know I possessed. I made dinner, helped Tommy with his homework, chatted with Jim about meaningless things. But inside, I was watching the clock, waiting for whatever was going to happen when night fell. Marcus had gone home, but promised to return by 8 o'clock with equipment. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, he'd said. At 7:30. Jim stood up from the couch where he'd been watching the news. I need to run out for a bit, he said, in that casual tone he used when he was lying. Hardware store closes at 9. And I need some things for a project. What project? I asked, keeping my voice light. Oh, just fixing that loose board on the back deck. Nothing exciting. He kissed my forehead, that familiar gesture that now felt loaded with deception, and headed for the door. Jim. I called after him. He turned, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes. Fear, guilt, love. Be careful, I said. His expression softened. Always am, Mags, always am. 5 minutes after Jim left, Marcus arrived in his old pickup truck. He had binoculars, a camera with a telephoto lens, and to my surprise, his former partner from his detective days, a woman named Rosa who was about my age and looked like someone you'd never suspect of being a cop. Marcus filled me in, Rosa said, shaking my hand. I'm retired too, but this sounds interesting. Plus, I hate it when people keep secrets from their spouses. Had a husband who did that, past tense. If you know what I mean. Tommy was with a neighbor. I'd arranged a last-minute playdate, claiming I had an evening appointment. Now the three of us sat in Marcus's truck, parked 2 blocks from our house, waiting to see which direction Jim would go. There, Rosa said, as Jim's silver sedan passed us. He's heading toward the warehouse district. We followed at a careful distance. Marcus and Rosa were professionals, and they knew how to tail someone without being spotted. They took turns, sometimes falling far back, sometimes switching lanes, always keeping Jim's car in sight. At 52, I'd never done anything like this. My life had been ordinary, raising children, managing a household, working part-time as a librarian. The most exciting thing I'd done in years was finally learn to use Instagram. Now I was conducting surveillance on my own husband, and my heart was hammering so hard I felt lightheaded. Jim's car turned into an industrial area I'd never been to before. Warehouses lined both sides of the street, most of them dark and abandoned-looking. He parked in front of a building with a faded sign reading Riverside Storage Solutions. Kill the lights, Marcus instructed, pulling into a spot behind a large truck that gave us cover. Through the binoculars, we watched Jim get out of his car. He looked around carefully, the way someone does when they're checking for surveillance. I realized with a chill, then approached a side door of the warehouse. He knocked in a pattern, 3 quick raps, pause, to more raps. The door opened, and I caught a glimpse of someone inside. A man, large build, wearing what looked like an expensive suit. Jim spoke to him briefly, then disappeared inside. Now what? I asked. Now we wait, Rosa said, and we watch who else shows up. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then a black SUV pulled up, followed by a silver Mercedes. 4 men got out. Total, all of them looking around nervously before entering through the same door Jim had used. Marcus said quietly, "I'm not liking this. Those men are armed. I can see the bulges under their jackets. Whatever meeting is happening in there, it's not just financial consulting. Should we call the police?" My voice was shaking. "And tell them what? We're conducting an illegal surveillance on a private citizen. We have no evidence of anything criminal happening." Then Rosa grabbed my arm. "Look, another car was pulling up, but this one was different. It was a police car. 2 officers got out, looked around, then entered the warehouse." "Are they raiding it?" I asked. Marcus was frowning. "I don't think so. They're not in tactical gear, and there's no backup. This looks more like they're part of whatever's happening inside." Rosa finished grimly. "My husband was in a warehouse with armed men and potentially corrupt police officers, and I had no idea if he was investigating them or working with them. We sat in that truck for another 45 minutes, the tension so thick I could barely breathe." Marcus had pulled out his phone and was making calls to contacts who still worked in law enforcement, trying to figure out what was happening without revealing too much. "No official police activity in this area tonight," he reported. "Whatever those cops are doing here, it's not official business." Rosa was taking photos with the telephoto lens, documenting everyone who entered and exited the warehouse. "We need to get closer," she said. "See if we can hear anything. That's too dangerous." Marcus argued, "So is sitting here while that woman's husband might be in trouble." I made the decision before I could talk myself out of it. "I'm going, Margaret." "No, he's my husband. I need to know what's happening." Before either of them could stop me, I was out of the truck and moving toward the warehouse. My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced myself to keep walking. Behind me, I heard Marcus curse softly and Rosa scramble to follow. The warehouse had windows, but they were high up and covered with grime. However, there was a fire escape on the side of the building. Rosa, moving with surprising agility for her age, climbed up first, then helped me up. Marcus stayed on the ground, keeping watch. Through a crack in one of the windows, we could see into a large open space, and what I saw made no sense at all. Jim was sitting at a table with the men we'd seen enter, but he wasn't threatened or restrained. He was showing them documents, pointing at what looked like photographs spread across the table. The police officers were there too, but they were standing behind Jim, not confronting him. One of the armed men, the largest one, was nodding as Jim spoke. Then he pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "Is he selling them something?" I whispered. Rosa was recording on her phone. "I can't hear what they're saying, but this doesn't look like a sting operation. This looks like a transaction." My heart sank. Could Jim actually be corrupt? Could everything in that secret office be a cover for something worse? Then the door burst open. Real police, a SWAT team in full tactical gear, flooded into the warehouse, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Everyone inside froze. Jim stood up slowly, his hands raised, but he was smiling. "Margaret, get down." Rosa pulled me away from the window as chaos erupted below. We scrambled down the fire escape and ran back to Marcus's truck. "What the hell just happened?" Marcus demanded. "I don't know, but Jim looked happy about it. He was smiling when SWAT came in. We watched as, one by one, the men from the warehouse were led out in handcuffs. The 2 police officers who'd entered earlier were among them. But Jim walked out on his own, talking to someone who looked like a federal agent. He set them up. Rosa breathed. He was wearing a wire. That's why he was showing them documents and taking money. He was getting them on record. Marcus nodded. Slowly, the cops were dirty, probably on someone's payroll, and your husband just collected evidence that will put all of them away. We sat there, stunned, as the scene unfolded. Jim stood by the police cars, giving what looked like a statement. At one point, he pulled out his phone in mad. A call, my phone rang. Mags, Jim's voice was shaking slightly. Where are you? I could lie. I thought I could pretend I was at home, but I was tired of lies, even justified ones. I'm in a truck 2 blocks from where you are, watching you. There was a long silence. How long have you known? He finally asked. Since yesterday. I found your office. And I found out who you really are. Another silence. Then, I need to finish up here. Can you wait, or do you want to go home? I thought about Tommy, safe at the neighbor's house. About the life I'd thought we had, about the man I'd thought I'd married versus the man Jim actually was. I'll wait, I said. We need to talk. Yes, he agreed quietly. We really do. Chapter 8, The Truth, and after 700 words, Jim came home 3 hours later. I'd sent Marcus and Rosa home, thanked them for their help, and picked up Tommy from the neighbor's house. Our son was asleep now, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, blissfully unaware that his parents' marriage was hanging in the balance. I was sitting at the kitchen table when Jim walked in. He looked exhausted, older than his 55 years, and when his eyes met mine, I saw genuine fear there. I'm sorry, he said, before I could speak. God, Mags, I'm so sorry. Sit down. You owe me the whole truth. He sat across from me, and for the next hour, my husband finally told me everything. He'd been a financial consultant back when we met. That part was true. But 10 years ago, he'd stumbled onto a money laundering scheme while doing an audit for a client. Instead of just reporting it, he'd dug deeper, collected evidence. Worked with the FBI to bring down an entire criminal network. They offered me a job after that, he said, not official law enforcement, but contract work. Private investigation for cases that needed someone who could move in financial circles without raising suspicion. I could keep my consulting business as a cover, work on cases that mattered, and make enough money to finally give you and the girls the life you deserved. But you didn't tell me. I wanted to every single day. I wanted to tell you. But Mags, these people, the ones I investigate, they're dangerous. They hurt families to get leverage. I've seen it. And I thought if you didn't know, you'd be safe. If they ever came after me, you could honestly say you knew nothing. I let that sink in a twisted way. His logic made sense, but it didn't erase the betrayal. You made me a fool, I said quietly. For 10 years, I kissed you goodbye every morning and had no idea who you really were. I asked about your day, and you lied to me. I built a life with someone who only existed halfway. Tears were running down Jim's face now. I know, and I know sorry isn't enough. But Mags, everything else was real. My love for you, for Tommy, for Sarah and Jennifer, that was all real. The life we built, the family we created, that was real. But it was built on lies, yes, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if I can fix that. We sat in silence for a long time. I thought about the years we'd had together, the way he'd held my hand during Tommy's difficult birth, the way he'd walked both my daughters down the aisle when their own father couldn't be bothered to yo up. The way he'd sat with me through my mother's funeral, strong and steady when I was falling apart. That case tonight, I finally said, the one you just closed, is it over? Yes. Those men are going to prison for a long time, the dirty cops. 2, it was my biggest case, and my last one. I looked up sharply. What? I'm done, Mags, I put in my notice with